as technology becomes even more prevalent, and it will continue to, it's those people who are able to master those people skills, that team building, leadership, empathy, kindness, all those things that seem to be lost. These are the people who are going to be the highest paid and most valued.
Hey guys, welcome back to the Triangle Real Estate Podcast. I'm your host, Matt Fagioli, and today I have the privilege of chatting to one of my heroes who's now become a friend, and his name is Bob Burg, and he's the author of many books, but maybe the most popular of those, or the one that sort of connected to my heart, was called The Go-Giver. He's got a new book out right now, and we'll talk about all of that. But there's nobody, I think, that I've met in recent years who has a better handle on the lost art of relationship sales. And I can't wait for you to meet him. So welcome, Bob.
Wow, what a nice introduction, Matt. Thank you.
Absolutely, man. Well, I'm a huge fan and love your book. In fact, normally in this situation, I would be holding up a copy of The Go-Giver. I have given out, I bought, I don't know how many copies, but I gave them all out. I went looking for one to hold up, and I was like, oh, I gave out every copy that.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that, though. That's very kind.
Yeah,
Appreciate
I'm a giver of books, and I only have maybe a handful of books that I do that with, but yours is on that list. And so when I meet a new friend, I always send them sort of one of my top 5 books. And
it.
so anyway, but without further ado, Bob, can you just introduce yourself a little bit to our audience, which is all of the Triangle MLS members, agents and brokers in North Carolina?
Yeah, just basically many years ago, started out as a broadcaster, graduated into sales, learned how to sell, and really enjoyed that and the personal development aspect, and eventually started sharing that with others. And just it's been a fun career. I had a book out back in the 90s called Endless Referrals: Network Your Everyday Contacts into Sales, which was all about building relationships, and the I guess basic premise was that all things being equal, people will do business with and refer business to those people they know, like, and trust. And that holds today as well as it ever did and as well as it ever will, I believe. And eventually wrote a book, The Go-Giver, with John David Mann. And then years later, here we are, Matt, having a great conversation.
Well, I was ranting before we jumped on and hit record here. You heard me ranting about a recent sales interaction that I had where, it was sort of typical of what you're seeing in the marketplace today, which is the art of relationship and connection and giving before you get, and all of these things that you talk about in your book are unfortunately hard to come by these days. Very rare.
Sometimes they are, and it's unfortunate, especially with all we know now about sales, selling, human nature, how people like to be worked with. And, it really is interesting because when you think about it, sales can be very easily defined as simply discovering what the other person needs, wants, or desires and helping them to get it. Right. And when we can keep that in mind, what it's really saying is shift your focus, right? Move from a focus off of yourself, that I focus or me focus, to a focus on them. When I used to, because I don't travel a whole lot anymore, I don't like to get on planes, and at 66, I just decided, I'm not going to do it anymore. But when I used to speak in front of, large conferences of salespeople, the first thing I would say is nobody's going to buy from you because you have a quota to meet.
Mm-hmm.
They're not going to buy from you because, you need the sale or the money. And they're not even going to buy from you just because you're a really nice person. They're going to buy from you because they believe they'll be better off by doing so than by not doing so. And, really, Matt, that's the only reason why anyone should buy from you or from me or from anyone else. And this is great news for that realtor who really has a heart to bring value to that other person. And and you know this, when you're doing a listing presentation, they're not going to list their home with you because you want them to. They're going to list their home with you because they believe they are better off by doing so than by not doing so. With that in mind, we've got to know that it's not about us, right? It's totally about them.
Yeah, that's awesome, Bob. Dead on. And the interesting thing about the Go Giver, I think, is that you guys in that book have laid out a framework of how to actually do that. I think everybody intuitively understands when they hear us talking about it. Oh yeah, of course you should put the other person first, and of course you should, have a give before you get attitude. But what's the framework, and what are the laws that make that happen? And so if you would please, could you tell everybody a little bit about the Go Giver, and then let's walk through the five principles there.
Sure. So the book itself is a parable, and it was co-authored with John David Mann, and he's a wonderful writer, storyteller. I'm much more of a how-to guy, so I'm step one, step two, step three. I'm the boring guy. John is the great writer and storyteller, and it was really about a guy named Joe who was a a young, ambitious, aggressive, up and coming sales guy good guy, good kid, but really kind of had his focus in the wrong place. It was all about him, right? It was all about what people owed him and why he should get this and so forth. And he met a mentor named Pindar who introduced him to some other people. And together they ended up helping Joe to shift his focus. And the five laws are the laws of value, compensation, influence, authenticity, and receptivity. And it begins with value, right? It begins with value. That's the foundational principle. And the law itself says your true worth is determined by how much more you give in value than you receive in payment. But when you first hear that, it's rather counterintuitive sounding. Give more in value than I take in payment. That sounds all nicey nice and everything, but it also sounds like a recipe for bankruptcy, right? So we simply have to understand the difference between price and value. Okay.
Mm.
So price is a dollar figure. It's a dollar amount. It's finite. It simply is what it is. Value, on the other hand, is the relative worth or desirability of a thing, of something, to the end user or beholder. In other words, what is it about this thing, this product, service, concept, idea, what have you, that brings so much worth or value to another human being that they will willingly exchange their money for it and be glad they did, while you make a very healthy profit? Can I give a couple of quick examples? And
Oh,
we'll
absolutely.
so let's take one outside of real estate. Let's say you hire an accountant to do your taxes. She charges you $1,000. That's her fee, literally her price, $1,000. But what value does she give you in exchange? Well, first she helps you. She saves you $5,000 in taxes. She provides you with the security and peace of mind of knowing it was done correctly. She saves you countless hours of work that allows you to be more productive. So, and all this was in exchange for that $1,000 fee. So she gave you more in value than she received in payment. So you feel great about it. But she also made a very healthy profit because it was worth it to her to exchange her time, her energy, her knowledge, her wisdom for that $1,000. But here's the key, and this is what's so important. This took place not because she was focused on her fee. She was focused on the immense value she was providing you. The money was simply the result. Okay. So, and this is why John David Mann and I say that money is simply an echo of value. It's the
Mhm.
thunder to value's lightning. So the value must be your focus. The value you provide that other person, your customer, your client. The value comes first. The money you receive is simply a natural result of the value you've provided. Now, as a realtor, and again, let's just say we're taking this in the vernacular of a listing. Okay, you list a person's property, their home, your client's home. Um, And you do this in exchange for a certain fee. Now, what value are you bringing them? Well, of course, you're going to sell their home at a higher price than they could sell it and for in less time with less aggravation than they could ever do without your knowledge, your hard work, your expertise, your contacts. Your right. You're also going to handle the staging and the advertising and the inspections and the negotiation, all these things. By the time all is said and done and their home sells, okay, they're receiving much more in value than what they're paying. So they feel great about it while you make a healthy profit. Okay. You gave more in value than you took in payment. But here's the difficult thing. As a realtor, you know that every other realtor can promise this listing prospect the same thing, and to a large degree they can do it. Okay, you may do it a little bit better than they do, but until the prospective client knows that, they don't know it. And unless a prospective client can differentiate between any two or more realtors, it's always going to come down to who has the lowest what fee or price.
Mm-hmm.
And trying to make low fee or low price your unique selling proposition is not a good way to do business. It's neither productive, nor is it sustainable, nor is it profitable, right? So no. So the question is, well, how do I as a realtor distinguish myself, right, from every other realtor, right? Well, and so the answer is you've got to be that difference. This is the difference between intrinsic value and extrinsic value. Intrinsic value is just the very nature of what you do, and that's what we talked about before: higher price, lower, less time, less aggravation. Stay all those. So that's intrinsic value that you provide. Great, fantastic, but it doesn't distinguish you from any other realtor. Extrinsic value is all about the experience,
Mm-hmm.
and that's key. And you've got to be that value, that additional value. This person's buying you before they're buying your company, right? They're buying you. So the question is, well, so okay, how? Well, the good news, and the good news is there's no bad news. It's just good news. The good news is there are dozens, if not hundreds of ways to communicate that additional value, but they tend to come down to five, what John and I call elements of value. And those elements of value are excellence, consistency, attention, empathy, and appreciation. And to the degree that you can communicate, and we could do an hour on each of those, but to the degree that you are able to communicate from the moment you meet them, whether it's on an inbound call, outreach, referral, however you first met that person, from the moment you meet them through the follow up and follow through the relationship building process, through the sale and referral aspects, to the degree that you communicate one or more, hopefully all five of those elements of value at every single touch point, that's the degree that you take a both low price or low fee and competition out of the picture.
Man, that's so great. And I think, my favorite are the last two of those, empathy and appreciation or gratitude, which you could probably bundle all of that down and call it humanity, which is my complaint today and every day is like the people who can deliver that just absolutely stand out in today's market.
Oh, absolutely. There was a book written, gosh, it must be 7 or 8 years ago. It was by Jeff Colvin, who was the editor at large for Fortune magazine, and it's called Humans Are Underrated. And the premise was that the question used to be, what can humans do that machines can't do? Okay. But that question's no longer relevant because there's basically nothing that humans can do that machines can't do. Okay. However, what he said is there are certain things that people will not accept from machines, but
Mm-hmm.
only from humans. Example would be, God forbid a relative or friend dies during an operation. You don't want to hear that news from a printout.
Hmm.
You want it to be from a doctor who is kind and empathetic and cares and who you know, right? And so what Mr. Colvin said is, as technology becomes even more prevalent, and it will continue to, it's those people who are able to master those people skills, right? That team building, leadership, empathy, kindness, all those things that seem to be lost. These are the people who are going to be the highest paid and most valued.
Mm. Man, that's right on the money. Gosh, I love this conversation. You're right. We could talk about it all day long.
Mhm.
Okay, let's move on though. Let's go to compensation, which I think is the thing where everybody that hears this parable, the light comes on. Like, oh, this is where it lands.
Yeah, well, the law of compensation says your income is determined by how many people you serve and how well you serve them. So, where law number one says to give more in value than you take in payment, law number two tells us that the more people whose lives you touch with the exceptional value you provide, the more money with which you'll be rewarded. So, we go back to our accountant in the first example. She did a great job of giving significantly more in value than she took in payment. So, if you're her client, the chances are you are very happy with her. You would use her services again, and you would refer her to others. Well, her other clients feel the same way. So our accountant is amassing an enormous army of personal walking ambassadors singing her praise. She gets to serve more and more people and make more and more money. Well, it's the same with a realtor. Unless this home sells for a whole lot of money, it's not going to make your year to provide great value to one person, right? So you want to have lots of people whose lives you're impacting, and that was the message that Nicole, who was the mentor in that part of the story, said to Joe, that the law of value represents your potential income. The law of compensation represents your actual income because it's all about how many lives you impact. And, this is why John David Mann and I are such big believers in referral based business, because with referrals, first, it's easier to set the appointment, right? Because you're going in on borrowed influence. So you're getting to see more people in a lot less time. With referred prospects, price or fee is less of an issue. Doesn't mean it's a non-issue, of course, or not an issue, but it's less of an issue because you go in again on borrowed influence, borrowed trust. So you come in with some gravitas and you're able to sell on high value rather than low price or low fee.
Hmm.
With a referred prospect, it's simply easier to complete the action to complete, whether it's the listing or whatever it happens to be, because of borrowed trust, or what we call vicarious experience. So, no, this person has never done business with you personally, but someone who they know, like, and trust has said, this is the only person you need to talk to list your home. This is the person. The company is great, stands behind everything. This person's knowledgeable. They'll return your calls. You'll know they care. They have your well-being, right? That's powerful, right? And then another benefit of a referral or working with referral-based prospects is they're already of the mindset that that's how you do business, since that's how they met you.
Hmm.
So to them, it's just a natural part of the process to refer you to others.
Mm. Yeah, and referral, is always a little bit of a slower burn, right? It takes a longer time to build that kind of audience. But of course, once it starts to snowball, there's just no other business to replace it for sure.
Hmm.
Mm.
Absolutely.
Okay, so number three is influence.
Yeah, the law of influence says your influence is determined by how abundantly you place other people's interests first. This one sounds counterproductive at best and perhaps even downright Pollyanna-ish at worst, right? Your influence is determined by placing other people's interests first. And so let me qualify this, if I may, and clarify, because this can easily be misunderstood and it's very important. When we say place other people's interests first, we certainly don't mean you should be anyone's doormat or a martyr or self-sacrificial in any way. Absolutely not at all. It simply is Joe, the protege, learned from several of the mentors. The golden rule of business, of sales, what have you, and we alluded to this earlier, is that all things being equal, people will do business with and refer business to those people they know, like, and trust. And Matt, there is no faster, more powerful, or more effective way to elicit those feelings toward you from others than by genuinely moving from that I focus or me focus to that other focus, looking to, as Sam, one of the mentors in the story, advised Joe, make your win all about the other person's win.
Mm. Geez, it almost sounds biblical, Bob.
It may be.
It may, you may have you guys may have stolen that one. I'm not
Yeah,
sure.
yeah, probably.
Awesome. Well, let's keep going. So, the fourth one is authenticity. Tell me about that.
Yeah, this one says the most valuable gift you have to offer is yourself. Now, in this part of the story, Deborah, who was the realtor, very successful realtor, she said to the audience, because in this one she was actually addressing an audience. She said that basically all the skills in the world, the sales skills, technical skills, people skills, as important as they are, and they are all very important, they're also all for naught if you don't come at it from your true, authentic core. But when you do, when you show up as yourself day after day, week after week, month after month, people feel good about you. They also feel comfortable with you. They also feel safe with you. And why wouldn't they? They know who they're getting. And it's a very powerful element of human nature, Matt, to want to be able to make sense of our world. In a world that often doesn't make sense, right? So to be able to know what to expect. So that person who shows up authentically, wow, trust is able to be established and trust is able to be maintained.
Mm.
I think the the not definition, but the meaning of authenticity has almost been uh, stolen, if you will, over the last years, and we see this on social media, to almost mean no boundaries. Just say or do whatever you please, whatever just comes to mind, whatever you want, because that's authentic, so it's okay. And I respectfully disagree with that premise. This would be like the person who says, "Well, I have anger issues and I yell a lot, and if I were to act any differently, that wouldn't be authentic of me." And of course, that's baloney. It simply means that this person has an authentic problem that they need to authentically work on in order to become a better, higher, effective, authentic version of themselves. I personally define authenticity very simply, and that is acting congruently with your values.
Mm.
I think if you're doing that, you're being authentic and you're on the right track.
Mm. That's great. Yeah, I think you could also use the word integrity, and I love the notion of integrity being just that people know what to expect from you, that you're going to deliver the same thing over and over and over again. So, man, love it, Bob. All right, last one, reciprocity, and this one always I think is a little the hardest one to grasp.
Mhm. So actually, it's receptivity, which is a tiny
Oh.
bit different. That's okay. They both have the same number of syllables, and they're cousins. Reciprocity and receptivity. So reciprocity, which was brought really to the forefront of consciousness by Dr. Robert Cialdini in his wonderful books, Influence, Science and Practice, and now his updated one from a few years ago, Influence, the Psychology of Persuasion. He talks about receptivity as being an element of human nature that causes us to want to do for someone else once they've done for us. That's reciprocity. And one can use that, like any principle, it can be used for good or evil. Right. One can use it in a manipulative way, or one can use it in okay. So what we're talking about here in the Go Giver is the law of receptivity. Receptivity is simply the ability to allow oneself to receive that which is given to them, and to receive it with gratitude. So the law of receptivity, in the Go Giver, says the key to effective giving is to stay open to receiving. And basically, Matt, it's simply this: it's understanding that, yeah, you breathe out. You know what? You also have to breathe in.
Mhm.
It's not one or the other, right? It's both. You breathe out carbon dioxide, you breathe in oxygen. You breathe out, which is giving, you breathe in, which is receiving. And the funny thing is, despite all the negative anti-prosperity messages that the world around us gives us on an ongoing, consistent basis, it's kind of disgusting, but is what it is. Um, the truth is, giving and receiving are not opposite concepts. Giving
Mhm.
and receiving are simply two sides of the very same coin, and they work in tandem. The key goes back to focus. You focus on the giving, then you allow the receiving.
Mm. Well, I when I said that I think that this is the hardest one for people to grasp,
Oh, yeah.
I think that it really
It,
is more difficult for people to receive. So, can you talk a little bit about that? Like maybe an example of how people can block that?
Well, look at the messages that we receive from the world around us. And this might be a combination of upbringing, environment, schooling, news media, television shows, movies, where you look at the movies. My friend Randy Gage of Prosperity Authority always talks about, in movies, there are two types of people, just about every movie. There are the good people, who are typically portrayed as struggling. They're poor, but they're honest, and they're happy. They're poor, but they're happy. And then there's the other type of character, right? The ones who are always taking advantage of, putting down, stepping on, stepping over these poor but happy people. And these are the evil, greedy, rich people who are terrible and horrible and have no soul, right? And you see that all the time. What's the message that gets put out? So what happens is, all these negative anti-prosperity messages that we receive from the time we're little kids all the way growing up. And remember, it's not that it's conscious, it goes into the unconscious. So, if you've received and taken in all these anti-prosperity messages, but consciously you've been taught to be, honest and trustworthy and kind and all that, right? Well, now you start going out there, you're doing great things, and you have money coming toward you, but those messages in the unconscious that you're not even aware of are saying, well, wait a second. If you're making a lot of money, what does that say about you? Who did you
Mm.
have to hurt to get there? Were you dishonest? Were you deceitful? What are people going to think about you? Right. And then we push away. We, again, unconsciously push away. So that's why it is so important, I believe, to make a study of prosperity, because all the anti-prosperity garbage comes into your head on an ongoing everyday basis. Most of us aren't even aware of it until we begin studying this stuff, and then we're conscious of it and we know. But I study all the time. I just took another prosperity class because I want to keep getting that good information in my head. But study people like Randy Gage, David Nagel, the late Bob Proctor, Sharon Lecter, Ellen Rogan, Ken Honda, Kim Angeli. You've got these great people who speak and write and teach on prosperity. Get that good information into your mind, into your heart, into your being, right? So that you're allowing it to work for you as opposed to against you.
Mm. Awesome. Bob, incredible as always. I appreciate you sharing this
Oh, my
with
pleasure.
all the Triangle members. And as I'm sure people are going to be excited to learn more, you have a newsletter that everybody needs to be part of, and a community that I'm part of. How does everybody get more information?
The best way is just to go to Burg.com, and there should be one of those little annoying pop-ups that come up that say they can subscribe to the Daily Impact email, which I put out Monday through Friday. So start with that, and then usually we have a message on there how they can join the Go Giver Success Alliance, which is the group you were just talking about, which is an online, I guess you call it an online group mentorship community, which is made up of some great people. And yeah, that'd be a great place to start.
Awesome. Bob, thanks again. We appreciate you being here. And guys, if you are part of the Triangle community, we appreciate you as well. Can't wait to see you back here on the Triangle Real Estate Podcast.